Hello everyone, Ebony Monet here, or Monet the Creator, and I'm really excited to be bringing back another video to the channel, especially because this video is very related to my last video on my PQE experience. So if you're excited to hear about that, please leave a comment, like, comment, subscribe, all those great things, and we're gonna jump right into the video for today. So first and foremost, in case you haven't seen the last video, what is the PQE? So the PQE, or the Preliminary Qualifying Exam, is an exam that graduate students have to take. It is a candidacy exam, so basically in order to be considered for a PhD, you have to first become a candidate and not just a student, and that requires you to take this exam. So depending on your program, this exam can look a variety of ways. You can need to do some type of written comprehensive exam from your coursework, or a written exam or an oral exam. There's a very large variety, and I recommend that as you're looking at graduate programs, or if you don't already know what your PQE process is, become familiar with it so that you know if it's something you're interested in. If you're already in the program, you kind of like have no choice, but if you're not in a program yet, definitely look at that, pay attention to it, and see if the training that is within the program is something that you're interested in as well. So exam preparation for me, so there was a course that my program had me take, as well as grant applications, and then this timeline that kind of like put everything into place for me. And so first the course. So we had a paper writing course, or a grant writing course, that we took during the fall of our second year, so during our G2 year. And during this class, you work on writing a mock proposal. There are other students in the class, and you give each other feedback. You do like a short presentation. There's a couple different assignments, but the end of that class, the goal is to have at least AIMS 1 and 2 written, along with figures, your specific AIMS page, basically writing a NIH F31, if you know what that is. It's a certain type of grant, has a very specific format, very similar to that there. And the goal of the PQE is for us to write a total of 3 AIMS. So during this class, we work on AIMS 1 and 2. We have these faculty members that are also working with us. And then during the rest of the year, or until you take your PQE, you are to work on your AIM 3 independently. That also means without your PI's like hand over it, if that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's how my program is, but some programs are different. But definitely, again, follow up with those rules, make sure all that stuff makes sense to you and that you're willing to do that for your PQE. So simultaneously to me being enrolled in this class, I was also applying for grants. So I applied for 2 grants. The first one was the National Science Foundation's Graduate Research Fellowship Program, or the GRFP, by the NSF. This is a very like huge application. It's so big that each of the specific areas that they support have different due dates, because the system just gets overloaded if they were all on the same day. But this was a kind of medium application. It's something that you could apply for up to 2 times. And basically with that, they just want some type of personal statement, or like why you're in science kind of thing, as well as a written statement or a science statement that basically was one of the main things I was preparing for in that class. So it's funny how like the class was asking me to have this due, and then the grant was due before that, so I had to just work on whatever I was submitting for the grant and then like throw it in for my assignment as well. Because the grant for the NSF at least was due in October, and our final version for our written drafts in the class was due in November, by October I had a pretty solid statement already, at least a draft at that point. I still look back on it, I'm like, wish I had notes and things, but you know, you learn in science, and that's honestly one of the best things about it. In addition to that, I applied for the Howard Hughes Medical Institute Gilliam Fellowship, and that is a diversity application. It's a little bit more intense. There's a little bit more involvement, and there's also like a mentor part that has to be filled out as well. That was due in December, so basically it was NSF, and then somewhere in between I had like draft versions of my written statement circulating for class, and then I had this NSF Gilliam due at the end in December. And what that basically did for me is it really forced me to flesh out aims 1 and 2. I really wanted to make sure that what I was communicating in these grants was clear, and even though these grants don't necessarily support the science, they support the scientist, like I still want to make sure that my science makes sense, and the more that the science makes sense, the more likely you're gonna get the grant. So after finishing the course and submitting those grants, I felt very, very good about my aims 1 and 2. And I knew that, okay, maybe I have figures to work on, maybe I have some cleaning up to do for the presentation, of course, because I have to do a presentation for my exam, but I felt really strongly about going into aim 3, and I already had some brainstormed ideas as well for aim 3. And also, just another note, since NSF was due in October and I joined my lab technically in September formally, I think I started working sometime in mid to late August. That's when I started really like doing my research again and getting back after like I had done my rotation in the summer. And I was really trying to get back in the swing of things and figure out like, okay, this is what I'm looking at for my aims 1 and 2. So I would say all in all, from at least that semester, I was working on this proposal from August to December. So that's already 6 months in itself. And then we get to picking our committee members. So I think that this is one of the most important parts, especially if your program allows you to do this. Unfortunately, not all programs have this ability. I mean, some programs are just so small that they have to assign people for PQEs. But luckily in my case, we do get to select our committee members. So if you do get to select your committee members, or you get to put a word in as to what you would like for your committee members, then like definitely listen to some of these tips I'm about to give. One thing that I was doing basically maybe around October, whenever we had a PQE meeting formally, I think that's when I started thinking, okay, who would I really like to have on my committee? I really had to consider, what did I need for my project? Very briefly, my project is on epithelial cells and how they develop, except in a neuroscience context. So it's a very strange experiment because it dips into a lot of different fields. But I really had to sit and think, okay, what would I really like for my committee? And first, I really wanted a geneticist. I had a lot of different genetic ideas and plans and just wanted to have someone to follow up with about this. And I really was focused on having this one person, Dr. Galloway, Jenna Galloway, on my committee. She also was someone that I had known beforehand, but you know what, I'm gonna touch on that a little bit later. But she was my geneticist and was helping me understand some of the genetic portions of my project. Then I needed someone that was in neuroscience. I needed someone that was kind of in developmental neuroscience, preferably progenitor biology of some sort when it comes to neural development. And I ended up choosing Gordon Fischel. He's like old school progenitor neurobiologist, awesome guy. And then lastly, I needed someone that was very versed in developmental biology and like systems biology, seeing things at a grand scale and trying to understand how those things work together. And for that, I actually chose a newer faculty member, Marco Samoas Costa. He's awesome, and we'll touch on how I know all these people in just a moment. I think a really important point to go directly off of like who I picked and why I picked them is like having a relationship or just knowing who those people are. So Jenna Galloway was one of my interviewers for the BBS program. She was one of my mentors during my rotation, so I did a rotation with her. She was also one of my teachers for the genetics class, so I already knew that she had a very good background in mouse genetics specifically. And she's just still a wonderful mentor of mine. So I really wanted to stay in contact with her. And I knew that her, because you have to pick a chair and then committee members, I knew that her being my chair, I would definitely be successful. And you want your chair to be someone that is positive, uplifting, and there for you for sure. So Gordon, by chance, I was introduced to Gordon Fischel through email from another member in my lab. I think she had rotated with him before, and she connected me with him because of a genetic experiment I was thinking about doing, ended up not doing it, but I still just knew of him. So whenever it came time to like cold email and be like, I would like for you to be a part of my committee. Like my name looked familiar, so at least I think that helped a little bit. Marco Simoes Costa, so he taught my developmental biology class, or he taught one of the classes for my dev bio class. And he's also another faculty member that is just on my floor. So he just knew that I existed, but not necessarily like the details of my project per se. But he knew about our lab and the things that we did, which is extremely helpful because it just put things into a perspective as I was talking about my project to him and explaining it. My next note would be picking nice or agreeable people. I would feel like this is like a very main point that you don't want to ignore. So if you know someone that has a history of being rude to people during their PQEs, or just rude to lab members, or just not very supportive, don't pick them. If you have the ability to not pick them, do not pick them, because honestly it's just gonna make your experience worse having preconceived notions of, oh well, they're not gonna like this, or oh, they always complain about this in people's presentations, and that really creates an additional distraction that you don't need in the grand scheme of the project. This will also help you reduce your stress levels. So like I was just saying, you won't be just thinking about like having that mouse run of like, oh, I could actually change this, I could do this instead, maybe they'd ask about this. And realistically, whenever you have those additional thoughts in your head, that's when you start trying to a bit overcompensate as a scientist, and that could also put you in a rabbit hole of like, now you're answering questions that are like very distantly related to your project, but they're still relevant because you brought it up, and it can just become very sticky at that point, I must say. And then the last point that I have is finding the time. So this is probably like the most important, and I kind of wanted to put it first, but I wanted to kind of come back around to this because despite this good experience, like I was really on a time crunch. And what ended up happening is, as I had picked these people, I was like, all right, this is great, got my 3 people, now let's pick a date. And unfortunately, I had like aimed for some time in March. I wanted to do some time before spring break so that was done with. But most of the people just had other obligations or conferences or travel during the month of March, and that was just not possible. So what ended up happening is the dates were the last week in February or sometime in April. And as I just said, like I felt so strongly about my aims 1 and 2 that I was very ready to just like get on aim 3. I had 2 months of time, get on aim 3, work on aim 3, grind out my aim 3, and then present it at the end of February. So I gave myself about 2 months to work on like that last aim by itself. And also like there are other alternatives of like, you could always just replace one person on the committee. But I was very sold on the people that I had selected for my committee. And if you really love the people that are on your committee and you feel that they will get or you will get the most meaningful conversation out of them being a part of your committee, then definitely just try your best to work with their schedule, because it will be more rewarding whenever you have someone that's more connected to your project versus someone that you had to go back and pick. Or it might just be hard to find someone else. I know that I emailed a good, I want to say 10 people maybe about my PQE, maybe a little bit less, and I only really got responses from 4, and one of them was like, I don't know where you got that information from, none of that is me, goodbye. And I was just like, okay, like I don't know what website I was looking at, but that's just a funny story for another day. But yeah, definitely try to schedule and have all those people that you really want for your exam, because it'll just help you be most successful. So dealing with project fluctuations. So as I said, aims 1 and 2 were very fleshed out for me. I didn't really have to change very much, maybe think about my experiments and how I might set them up and analyze them, but there wasn't that much that I had to add or subtract to those aims. However, the way that they have us write that practice exam for class, at least the way I did, is we're supposed to use the full amount of space with just the 2 aims, such that whenever you add the 3rd aim, you then have to trim off stuff from the other aim. So that was a little bit annoying, but you know, and still I rise. It is okay. I think that's the main thing about project fluctuations and things being unsure. So literally my aim 3 that I was working on for those 2 months, up to 3 or 4 days prior to me giving my exam talk, things were still changing. And especially for AIM 3 specifically. At the same time, like, we submit a written version of our exam the week prior to the oral exam. So if I'm to make any changes, like, I'm expected to provide a reason why and like clearly show that in my oral presentation as well. To all that I say, it's okay for things to change, especially if you have a very strong rational reason as to why. And remember that comments that you get, feedback that you get, you take it or you leave it. So like I was saying, I got comments up to like 3 or 4 days prior to my exam, and if that's the case, then like I could apply all those comments, or I could just say, you know what, this is not best for me to try to present. And there were some things that I did have to, especially with my written exam, that I did have to say like, this is such a good idea, but because of how invested this already is in this written portion, I do not believe it's best for me to change this. However, I will talk about this in my oral presentation. Now, this is also to say that your program allows you to do that. If your program doesn't allow you to do that, that's kind of problematic, because science is like ever changing. So you should, if you have some type of gap period between the time that you submitted written and have the oral, then you should be able to change things if you saw fit and be able to explain it. So definitely keep that in mind. And remember the power you have as a brilliant grad student. I'm telling you. And then my personal prep. So this is what I like to think is like the fun part. So first and foremost, I had one of my girlfriends that took her PQE a few months prior to me. And I remember her saying like, yep, and I wore this because I wanted to wear this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my goodness, I need to think about what I'm gonna wear. I need to think about how I'm gonna have my hair. I need to think about how I'm gonna do my makeup. Like literally everything like started churning from there. But that's like the really exciting part. Like this is literally the dress I wore the day of the PQE. It's such a cozy dress. And like I really like shopped around. I was trying to make sure I chose something that I would feel comfortable and confident in. You don't have to go out and buy a new outfit. I just really wanted another knitted dress. But like I really was intentional about deciding what I wanted to wear and knowing prior, like not deciding the day before, but really being intentional about what I was wearing. I also got my nails done. I just had them painted in a color that I really liked. I think it was actually a green. It was a little bit of a different green, and that was really nice. A nice little combo with the green on green. I also got a massage. So like 2 days before the exam, I signed myself up to get a massage so that I could go and rest and enjoy things for once. And honestly, whenever it comes to things like this, it can be hard to say that like, oh, I as a person, human being, individual with a body deserves rest. Especially when it's like you're in a grind season. But seriously, first of all, the nail appointment, but the massage as well, having myself go and just like have something that I really enjoy getting done, or having my body relax, having the soothing music, having to not actually look at my computer for a few hours, y'all. Like it just really helps you clear your head. And sometimes whenever you come back to something, you even have a better mindset about how to approach it, or a different mindset about how to approach it. I really went all out with my makeup and hair. I'll see if I can like attach a picture or something in the video. But I had like this beautiful hairstyle that like absolutely love. I had worn it for a wedding just a few weeks prior. I also tried a new lip style, which is actually on my lips right now. And by chance, the lipstick was called Confidence. And I absolutely loved it. I thought everything was just so great about it. But yeah, like just really trying to feel your best. In my opinion, the most important point here is to just do things that make you physically and emotionally feel good. Like if that's getting your nails done, if that's getting your hair done, if that's I'm going to watch a movie, if that's going to the beach, if that's whatever it is, do it. Because you rather have taken that time to rest and not be looking at your exam, your written, your oral practicing, than to basically burn yourself out up into your exam day. And I will say that one part of my prep that made me really know that I was ready to do my exam is I started doing a lot of like visualization exercises. Like I don't know what really came to my mind when I was doing this, but I was really just sitting and taking time to just think about like, okay, and then whenever I'm on the other side of this and I'm like going out to dinner with my girlfriends to celebrate, and oh, and then whenever we have this going on, like just thinking about what's in the future and what's past the PQE, because there's definitely life after the PQE, and sometimes in academia it can be really easy to just like there's like this big surmounting thing we're building up to, and then it's done. But then I knew like, all right, time to really get the work going, because like I'm ready to, once again, I have been saying in the last videos, get on, because I'm very much ready to do my experiments, my project. I'm so excited for it, and like the PQE was just one step of many and trying to get me there. And also like I really focused more on my success and that envisioning what the other side looked like versus like the failure, the potential of failure. And I think a lot of that came from self-integrity, self-love, self-confidence, faith, a lot of those things that I had been working very hard on for about the last year and a half. But all of that will have to be included in another video. Nonetheless, having a lot of self-confidence in your PQE is probably one of the top most important things that you need. And then the day of the exam. So that day, I really took a lot of time to focus on my breathing. Like we have to step out prior to like the exam commencing, and then step out prior to the committee like deciding they like reconvene. And like in those moments, instead of like flipping out or just like panicking, anything of that nature, I really just focused on breathing. I just told myself like in and out. Mind you, I've also been doing like so much yoga over the last year, almost year and a half, and that's been very life-changing. But like I feel like that really, on top of like keeping myself like calm, breathing, and just reminding myself of how much confidence I had in my project, and reminding myself of how much I knew about my project, and also accepting the fact that like I knew what I knew on that day. I will learn from this exam, and in 6 months from now I will be able to answer these questions better, or I might have a thought of that idea already, or I might have a genetic line that's better. And at the end of the day, like that's a part of the experience. You are who you are today, and you present the information that you know on that day the best way you can. And as long as you do that and you answer your questions the best way possible, then you're gonna be successful. I felt that my committee also had a very high expectation of what my oral exam was going to be like from my written. So like I said, we submit our written exam a week prior to our oral, and my written exam, I suppose, was just very, very fleshed out. I mean, I had applied for 2 grants already. I really just wanted it to look good. I had done feedback for almost 2 months on the written portion. I felt really good about the written portion whenever I submitted it, and I could literally see the relief in my committee's eyes whenever it was time for me to start the presentation, and there wasn't massive confusion and massive gaps that were just in the written version that made things hard to understand already. I also really found myself speaking with confidence. Like that, once again, is just so important. And my committee didn't really ask me questions that were more difficult than what my lab had already asked me. So luckily, like I had like a really hard set of background questions already, and it was really like a lot of the low-hanging fruit questions, if you will, that I got. And that training with my lab beforehand is probably what made those questions seem so easy. It's just answering those questions and knowing that there's harder questions that they could ask. I knew that my lab had really prepared me for the exam, honestly. And I also was not afraid to say the phrases, I don't know, I'm not sure, or I have not heard or thought of that, or even like I don't quite remember. Like there were some things that, like a question that I had gotten, like I knew what paper he was referring to, but I couldn't quite remember how the experiment went in that paper, and it's a paper from our lab. And I said, like I can't exactly remember, but I know that they did these experiments and it was confirmed through that. And that was good enough. It's like sometimes you don't always have to know the exact answer, but they're really just testing to see, like, did you do your background research? Sometimes, actually, I believe that one of my committee members had like read one of the papers that I referenced a lot in my written version, just because they were really like, okay, I wanted to clarify and make sure I could ask appropriate questions here. And like, you gotta be knowledgeable of that. A lot of people say a good thing to do is to be really knowledgeable about like 4 or 5 papers that are really foundational in your project, and really know them, because you'll probably get questions about those more than anything else. And also, okay, so this was like what I wanted to start with, but I put it more towards the end, and this is like very strange, very crazy, because a lot of people, let me not call it strange or crazy, because it's not strange or crazy, it's just my experience. But I finished my entire exam presentation with time to spare. Now, that in itself is just like, a lot of people don't even get through their background slides, nonetheless their whole presentation. And the way that I had structured my presentation, I wonder if like that structure in itself set me up for more success, because it allowed things to not be like, things were very connected and flowed better in the way that I structured it versus like the way a lot of people suggest the PQE gets structured. So if you want to hear more about that, definitely let me know, because I'd be more than willing to share how I went about doing that. And also, like, the best thing about the exam was I got a clear pass. So there are 3 things that can happen from this exam. There is just a no pass, fail. There is a clear pass, and there is a pass with conditions, or a conditional pass. And the conditional pass just means that they have either identified some weakness in knowledge, or maybe a class that you should take, or maybe something in the written needs to be edited. There's a variety of things of what that could look like, at least in my program, and each program is going to look different for this. But I received a clear pass, and I'm so proud of myself, because of all things, I really just wanted myself to have that confirmation of, I did so well on this that I just got a pass. Point blank, period. Nothing else, just a pass. And then post-exam feedback. So we're almost done with the video here. I'm glad that I've waited to record this 3 or 4 weeks after my PQE, because I've really had time to sit and think about feedback that I've gotten and just have different conversations with people as well. And first of all, after I did my PQE, I got my clear pass. I had such a strong, radiant energy, confidence, just I felt so good. I knew that I had just done something absolutely incredible. And this is a like tally of all the things I mentioned in the, like how my experience was. And there's a completely opposite extreme. And a lot of the time, the story of what the PQE is much, much different than my narrative. However, I just felt so good and so happy to have had that experience in my PQE, to be able to share it with you all. I got amazing feedback from my committee. They gave me a lot of different ideas. They gave me like, oh, have you thought about looking at this before? And that's exactly what I wanted from this committee. I wanted people that had a very diverse background in just research, literature, knowledge, and were able to contribute to me trying to pursue this very niche knowledge area in like neurodevelopmental biology. And also, all of those people have offered to still be a resource to me if I ever need additional guidance, which is also awesome. Many people have been very shocked with how my PQE experience went, especially with the presentation finishing early. Like, another thing that was very interesting is one of the PQE people were nodding off during the presentation. And I kind of took it as a good sign of like, okay, let me just get through this because he's ready to go. But truly and honestly, a lot of people were shocked with how I interacted with my committee, how my presentation went, and all those things. And honestly, I feel like it comes down to how prepared I felt, how much I picked how I went about picking my committee members very wisely, and just being passionate and excited about my project. I think that puts like an edge on like my presentations that is top tier. Honestly, anytime someone is very excited about their research, it is always more intriguing to listen to their presentation. And also, being that I'm on the other extreme of the PQE experience, so a lot of people will have very bad or varying bad PQE experiences, and I really don't want people to think that's the only way that it can happen, because the bad stories a lot of the times are much louder than the ones that are good. And I wanted to really share this experience with you guys so you can know, yes, having a fun, even a PQE experience is possible, and there is a way to go about doing this so that you can feel an internal drive, motivation, and success, and allow your committee members to see that in you and say, yep, this person is definitely ready for PhD candidacy. I also feel like the PQE is really an opportunity to build scientists in a new way and be prepared for ways that they might be questioned during like future exams or future keystone meetings. There's so many situations where you might just be thrown random questions like that, and you have to be prepared to try to answer them in the best way you can. And the purpose of the PQE, once again, is not to tear scientists down. And if that's the way your program has it structured, it's just no bueno, no bueno, no bueno. Also, my PQE form, or like the evaluation they fill out after and submit it to my program heads, was very tidy. Like, there was not much on there, and I didn't think much of it until one of the administrators from my program was like, I have never seen a PQE form look like this. What did you do? And I was just like, well, like, I did XYZ, ABC, and I worked really, really hard on this. Like, I think that's another thing that I haven't stressed a lot, but like, I worked extremely hard on this. Just about every time I met with my PI, she was telling me like, I can tell you're working really hard on this. And yes, I definitely was. So overall, I think that the PQE should really be treated more as an experience and not an exam. Like, I feel that it's trial and error, from the point of what you choose for your aims, to changing those aims, to the point of picking your committee, to the point of having those practices and realizing like, this written and this oral don't match anymore. Like, all of those things are trial and error, and that's just how science exists. So in all honesty, I want people to recognize that making the best decisions for you, and having a lot of those things in mind, and thinking about a lot of these things that I talk about in this video and intensely, and really like being intentional about a lot of the things that I have talked about in this video today, can really help you have a successful PQE experience. So if you are interested in some sort of master class or something of the sort about being successful for your PQE, please let me know. My email is in the description box. I would love to chat with you about some potential things I do have coming up. And also, I'm so excited. I don't know when this video is gonna get posted, but just last week, actually a week ago today, I recorded the first episode of my podcast and it went up. It is called Navigating the Hidden Curriculum. It is basically my next project where I am trying to demystify pathways into science. So my first interview is already posted. If you want to listen to that, it'll also be in the description box, but I will also try to get that up on YouTube with the video film eventually, but be patient, I got things to do. The last thought I want to leave you all with is that you learn from every single thing that you do. As long as you try your best, you give your best, you learn from your mistakes, you make that, you're okay with change, you allow things to pivot when needed, I think that you will always be successful. So once again, this has been Monet the Creator. I hope that you enjoyed hearing about my PQE experience. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Bye bye, y'all.